People talk about a relationship like it's a destination. I want to be in a relationship and everything's going to be fine. Well, no, it's not quite like that. When I first started working as a hypnotherapist, I thought, I'm just fascinated by interesting people. I want to understand how they tick. When I wrote my first major self-help book, Change Your Life in 7 Days, I thought I want to write the definitive book on relationships. Relationship is not something you can put in a wheelbarrow. It's a dynamic process of relating. People have a happy ever after kind of view, and that's my princess looks like that. And we'll never have any problems because once we're in the relationship, everything's fine. You're in for trouble.
And you're the first one to admit that you're not the shining example of anything. You said you're still a work in progress.
Certainly for me, there's some truth in that. In fact, about 10 years ago, I could make a relationship last a whole week in those days. You know, it's partly my mindset because I'd had my heart broken before. Even though a part of me wanted to get into a relationship, another part of me, that subconscious part, was going, hang on, we could get hurt here. But that also means keeping me out of the delights and wonders of a fulfilling relationship. And it was only when I got happier in myself that then I was able to properly relate to somebody else. Because I have been where it isn't, and I'm now where it is. I've figured out the difference for me, and if I can do it, other people can do it. I really get a thrill out of creating a positive change in the world. And sometimes that's with one person at a time. Sometimes it's with big groups when I do these live events, you know, a new book, and I can reach millions of people with that.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go? This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Paul McKenna is an absolute legend. This man has sold 7 million books with titles like I Can Make You Rich, I Can Make You Thin, I Can Make You Confident. In fact, I'll confess something to you. I used to listen to his audio tapes when I was in a taxi on my way into the city as a banker, and I'm just such a huge fan of Paul. He's always been out there pushing you, teaching you techniques like NLP and all these other things to do more in your life. And he's back for his second episode of London Real to talk about relationships and the 7 things that you can do to improve your relationships. And it's all about communication, expectations, and we even went through a technique called havening on the show. This is something that Justin Bieber does as well, and it's got to do with touching your arms like this and also doing certain visualization exercises, which you can do with me and Paul on the show. Again, I always love sitting down with Paul. He's got amazing energy, incredible stories. He's super frank. He's got a massive podcast as well, and I know you're going to enjoy this incredible episode. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Paul McKenna, the British hypnotherapist, behavioral scientist, and best-selling author. For the past 30 years, you've helped millions of people successfully lose weight, quit smoking, and gain confidence, including David Beckham, Ellen DeGeneres, and Stephen Fry. You are the UK's most successful nonfiction author and have sold over 7 million books, including I Can Make You Rich, I Can Make You Happy, and I Can Make You Thin, which is the best-selling self-help book in UK history. Your latest work, 7 Things That Make or Break a Relationship, uses scientifically proven strategies to provide practical techniques designed to transform romantic relationships. Paul, welcome back to London Real.
It's great to be here. I've got to say, I really enjoyed the last time, Brian. It was fantastic. I got asked a lot of things no one's ever asked me before.
It was fun. I can't wait to get started. I want to dive deep into this book. But first, I want to find out, how are you doing? I think last time you were here, you had kind of just come back from LA and you were like, I'm back in the UK for good. What's the last year been like? What's it been like getting reacquainted with the British Isles? And are you here to stay? That's what
I'm
I
here
wanna
to
know.
stay. Yes,
Okay.
I love London. I think it's my favorite city in the world. I love, say, New York. I love LA. I love, Milan. I love Barcelona. But I really love London. I suppose, I don't know if I mentioned this last time I was here. I was good friends with brilliant Hollywood producer, a guy called Robert Evans, who made Love Story, True Grit, The Godfather.
Oh, wow.
And Bob sadly passed away last year. And but I used to go over and hang out with him. And I remember one day he said to me, he had this great voice. He said, Henry Kissinger said to me, make 3 circles. The big one, that's your acquaintances. The smaller one, that's your friends. The real small one's your real friends. People will be there for you. You got to be there for them. And so I went away and did it. And I thought, oh, I've got more real friends than I realized. But the majority of them back here in Europe, particularly in the UK, but in France, Spain, Italy. So decided to move back, and we really liked it. So decided to stay. And I had a great time in Hollywood. I was there for 10 years. But I love being here. I love the British countryside. I like my friends. I can't say I love the weather. That's it. People say, do you ever miss being in LA? I went, just the weather. But my wife loves the seasons. I could do without them. I had enough of them growing up, Just give me the sunshine.
Yeah, the last few months really reminds you that London is not always sunny, is it? All right, but you haven't been to LA just to get some sun or anything. You've stayed in Europe.
Yeah, well, I've been and visited friends.
Okay.
And the nice thing is, because Los Angeles is an ontology, it's not just a location, so it's a state of mind, right? And, when I was there, I was staying with some friends, and I'd wake up in the morning and I thought, it's nice to wake up here different, because when I was living there, I'd wake up and I'd go, right, I got to call my agent, I got to do this, I got to write a book, I got to do a TV show. And that overachiever mindset was great for when I arrived, because that's the kind of guy I was.
Yeah.
That's not really who I am now. I don't really have anything to prove these days as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I like achieving, but I don't feel like I'm in a race to compete with everyone else. But at the time I did.
Did you get all that out of your system in LA?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
And then some.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now you're the new media guy. So I'm loving your podcast, the Positivity Podcast. You've got some great guests on there. John Ronson, who actually just saw in New York City and had him on the show. That guy's he's
brilliant,
he's
isn't he?
amazing. Alain de Botton, who we just had on as well. Heston Blumenthal. Are you enjoying this new media piece? Because, you're a classic kind of older media guy with books, but what's this like?
Well, I did a show for Hulu, did a couple of seasons where I interviewed people as a psychologist, not as a journalist. And the gist of that was, how do you do what you do? So I would interview Roger Moore or Richard Dawkins or Lulu or Rachel Ray. It was a very eclectic mix. Ryan Seacrest, Simon Cowell, Tony Robbins. And I loved doing it. I had no idea if I'd be any good at it, but apparently I was. And I moved back here, and Global, a big media company, approached me and said, we're looking to do podcasts, and we wonder if you'd be interested. So I went away and I researched it, and I found that it is, as you say, one of the fastest developing new mediums in media. And so I said, yeah, I wouldn't mind interviewing people and discovering their success mindset without actually asking that question, but asking questions that lead around it. So if you're listening to it eventually, you just go, oh, I see how they see the world, or I understand how they think now, or I've got a glimpse into that success mindset of this person. It's made me feel more uplifted, more positive. And so I usually come away from it feeling pretty up myself. And the people who I interview say, well, I've never been asked that sort of stuff before, kind of like your show here. And so I'm loving doing that. It's become a huge hit. It's in the top 10% of podcasts worldwide at the moment.
And your show with Mel B really popped off, right? Because she talked about some
yeah, she
serious
talked
stuff.
about, I mean, again, she was incredibly, I suppose, authentic and she's very real as a person. And I don't know her, but she was just so candid. And, she talked about her ADHD, about also some of the tough times in her life, about some of the things that really work for her now. And it became a huge hit, yeah.
It's because it was probably you and her in a room, right? When
That's
you
it.
recorded it. And so it just allows people to let their guard down. And also, I think audio only just lets people relax.
I think it is that, but also this is something that I've had, which is pretty much a blessing. It's not really such a burden, but throughout my life, people tell me everything about everything. So I can sit down on a park bench and people start talking to me and open up about their life, let alone when they sit in my study and I'm doing therapy with them. So it's kind of got a flavor of that, in as much as I'm not trying to be penetrating in my questions, but I just can't help. I'm fascinated by people. I want to understand how they tick. I'm not looking for a scoop. I'm not a journalist. I'm just fascinated by interesting people. It's funny, my wife said to me, what if you get somebody who's not that interesting? I said, it's not possible. Everybody's interesting to me. And if they're interesting to me, they'll be interesting, I hope, to the audience that are listening.
A lot of people will be fascinated by that, Paul, because a lot of people don't find anyone interesting. They find them irritating. I mean, how do you find interest in everyone? Are you just always curious how they tick? Was that always something you were born with?
I definitely can find people irritating, there's no doubt. But no, generally, I find people interesting. Even people that everybody else doesn't, or they find really irritating, I'll say, no, because I'm looking at them not just as a person, I'm looking at them structurally in terms of their thinking and their behavior, because I've spent decades in the trenches having to figure out two things. How is it that somebody is doing what they do to upset them, to make their life dysfunctional? Or how is it that somebody is doing something that's making them exceptional, that makes them absolutely amazing? And as a behavioral modeler, I then want to unpack that so that I can codify it and then teach it to other people through my books or apps or at my seminars and things like that. So, given I come from an NLP background, and as Richard Bandler described NLP as an attitude of curiosity, a methodology that leaves behind it a trail of techniques. And that's something I work towards as an ethos.
And I remember your mind programming CD, and I talked about this before, but Paul, I used to take a taxi from Notting Hill into the city every single morning, and I would strap my seatbelt on and listen to the 28 minutes and 31 seconds of the mind programming CD. And this is before I started meditating, because you couldn't find meditation back then.
Yeah.
And it was your way of there's so many techniques in there and so many things that you would have me do, whether it was visualizing the bad things in my life and making them small, and visualizing the great things in my life and seeing the future. And I mean, that stuff was really revolutionary.
Well, thank you. I mean, that was my objective. When I first started working as a hypnotherapist, I thought I could probably work with a few thousand people in my lifetime, but I had a background in radio. And so I thought, hey, why don't I record a trance and make it really good using all the technology of a modern, sound studio. So some messages go in the right brain, some in the left brain. So we do these audio splits, and I mark out certain suggestions, and so it becomes almost like a holographic experience. And I put it onto a cassette, as it was in those days, and I started advertising, and lo and behold, I was selling rather a lot of them. And then they became CDs, and now, of course, everyone wants an audio downloader. They want something on their phone that they can. So nowadays, people buy either one of my techniques or an app, or they get it with a book or something where they can just hit a button and I pop out and I make them feel better. Or I pop out and I give them some insight into this and that, or I ask them questions that get their brain to find solutions to their problems.
And do you miss the old days in the noughties where you kind of owned the bookstores, or do you enjoy this new media days and the fact that someone can pop on an app and see you? Like, how do you feel about it?
Well, yeah, a bit of me does miss the old days. I missed, when I was a radio DJ, because it was a lot of fun. There wasn't that many radio stations, and we could play what we wanted and things like that. And as you say, the old days in terms of books, you're absolutely right. There was only a couple of TV shows you had to do and be in the windows in the high street, and that's it. You're done. Nowadays,
you sold hundreds of thousands of copies, and boom. As long as the work was good, which yours was, and it was resonating with people. These days, it's a different ballgame.
It is. There's more democracy now. The internet equals more democracy. So there's some good and bad things from the internet. But what it means is that you end up doing lots of different genres of program. There was nothing like this back in the noughties, which is a brilliant show, I think, in as much as you've got plenty of time. The questions allow you, to talk rather than, if I was doing daytime television, you've got 6, maybe 7 minutes if you're lucky, and it's all bumper sticker wisdom. You've got to hammer it home like that, rather than actually be able to explore in depth some of the things you're talking about. So, sure, I don't mind doing those sorts of programs, but I also like doing this. And of course, now you have podcasts, which are listened to by millions of people, and they might be in a specialist genre. So NPR, for example, who the largest podcast maker in America, has 42 different genres: self-help, religion, politics, all kinds of different channels, if you like. So people can, sure, they can listen to the broadcast and get the highlights, and then go to the narrowcast, the long tail as it were, and decide what it is that they specifically want.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing in that way. But it also means that when you do the book, there's also other things that you're doing. So you do live events and you do all sorts of other things. It's not just about publishing it.
Yes. Oh, no. It was that is a separate business, but they interlink. So people might read a book and go, like what this guy has to say, or wow, I actually got a benefit from this. I'm going to go see him live. So they might come and see, I sometimes do evening events, 90 minutes of rah-rah, it's like an evangelist rally, but without the religion. I walk out and I say, right, who here suffers from a trauma, it holds them back in life, they cannot get over it, a few hands go up, like to come and join me, step forth, I'll do something like this amazing new havening technique. 10 minutes, 15 minutes later, bam, they're cured. Then I turn and I do it to the entire audience. And so it's a bit like having a personal coaching session with me. There's just 500 other people present. And so that's the sort of live evening events I do. But then I also do, I teach hypnosis with Richard Bandler. We do a weekend of teaching people how to hypnotize other people and themselves, and then go do cool stuff with it. And then I'll take up, I'm a hired gun these days. So people hire me from all over the world to go in and teach confidence, persuasion, influence, NLP, hypnosis, etc. And I love doing that. I like traveling around. I mean, the hard work's doing the 500 selfies at the end, I mean, my face by the end of it.
You're such a showman, Paul. So that's really you, right? I mean, you love being on stage. You love doing that stuff. A lot of guys like hiding behind books, but you don't. I mean, you like being out there.
Yeah, I mean, I started as an entertainer, although I always had an interest in psychology and meditation and Buddhism, things like that. But I was primarily an entertainer. And then I became much more interested in the academic side and the scientific side of hypnosis and modern psychology. And I like to think what I've done is apply the two. So it's a form of edutainment. It's a sort of stand-up therapy, if you like. So I'm actually using comedy and using my interpersonal skills with people to create change, usually in somebody I'm demonstrating upon, then en masse, or I set up, a sort of a series of exchanges with people in the audience to create a sense of interconnectedness. And as these people in the room start getting breakthroughs, everybody else does.
And this won't become a Netflix show at some point, Paul?
Well, it could. I mean, somebody actually came in to film one of the seminars, and they've made it into a little movie. I'm just waiting to see what happens with that. But yes, that would be, Tony Robbins, I thought, did a brilliant job with his movie where he allowed the cameras in, and, Tony's awesome, he's fantastic. Yeah. And they genuinely captured the magic. And that's quite hard sometimes when you're taking something that's that big and making it that big now on a widescreen. But, you're condensing it all, and does it stay true to it? Well, yes, I think it can do. So that's absolutely something I would love to do in future. I think for people like me, we're content makers. The more platforms there are, the more technology there is to deliver it, the better.
Okay, but no more Hollywood and no television shows.
Oh, I wouldn't say no to television shows. In fact, a couple of producers in the last few months have approached me and said, got an idea for this. And I thought, ooh, yeah. So, that happens a lot to me. People say they've got an idea. It doesn't always happen, but when it does, and it happens well, it's very good. So, yeah, I'm going to live here now. I'm not going to live in Hollywood, although I still visit from time to time, but we're actually thinking of moving to the country, and I'll maybe get some more dogs, and maybe not go at life at breakneck speed. Although I said that I was going to calm it down last year, and I ended up doing more live events than I've ever done in my life. So,
I know I see a lot of pictures of your dog on your Instagram account. And your podcast guests, but I don't see you slowing it too far down, Paul.
I know, I've tried to. The problem is, I think it's just inherently who I am, but there's no doubt that I've taken a slightly different approach to life. Whereas I used to do things, I've done things over the years for the money, or I've done things because I thought they were a good career move. Now, I only do things I like and work with people I like. And it's amazing. People go, why wouldn't you? I go, no, I got caught up in the business of it all. And, and I got convinced to do things that later on I hated. And I thought, actually, that's a year of my life I'll never get back. Yeah. So now I'm much more selective. In fact, there was somebody said to me many years ago, before I became, I suppose I got well known and successful, they said, you're going to find the hardest thing to do is say no. Because when you've strived so hard and been hungry and you wanted it to happen, when it does, yes to everything. And then, of course, you get overwhelmed. And I used to burn out and think I'd treat life as a marathon and, just burn out. Now I treat it as a series of sprints, and I build in recovery time.
Yeah, well, you've been there and done that. I mean, most people, if they were offered a television show, they would go running after it because it seems like something they've been waiting their whole life for. But you've seen how that can go wrong, or how that can just be, like you said, a year of your wasted life, and you're like, I want to choose my things.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this book, because last time you were here, I really appreciate your honesty about your own relationships and what was going on in LA and your recent relationship. And so I thought it was quite refreshing that you were going to write a book about this stuff. Why write this book now, Paul?
Okay, well, I can only write it now. In fact, about 10 years ago, my publisher said, could you write a book on relationships? Big genre. I went, well, if I could stay in one. And
was it that bad?
Yeah, well, it wasn't bad. It was just different, but it's better now. And so I could make a relationship last a whole week in those days. And, it's partly my mindset because I'd had my heart broken before. So even though a part of me wanted to get into a relationship, another part of me, that subconscious part, was going, hang on, we could get hurt here. You're falling for this person. Oh, I don't think so. I think we'll sabotage it and keep you safe. But that also means keeping me out of the delights and wonders of a fulfilling relationship by staying in the same Groundhog Day type situation, right. And the next. And so I had several epiphanies, and there's a very interesting study into happiness that shows that initially it showed that people that were married tended to be happier. So the researchers concluded that marriage makes you happy. But because it was a longitudinal study, they found that actually the people that are happy in themselves tend to get married or form functional relationships. And it was only when I got happier in myself, cleaned up the past, the fear of getting hurt and all that sort of stuff, that then I was able to properly relate to somebody else and for it to work and be functional. So I decided, because people say to me, how long does it take to write one of these? To physically write, it's a year. But to research it is decades. So having been in the trenches and worked with people, very often, even though they come to see you about one thing, it ends up being relationship related in some way. So I also was aware that there's a lot of scientific research now that shows us why, or certain patterns that people engage in, that means they're likely to form a lasting positive relationship, or certain patterns that don't. And so I took a lot of this very complicated psychological research and distilled it into user-friendly, straightforward, wisdom, ways that people can understand how it is they do what they do and why they might get those results. So when people say to me, what are the 7 things? There's 7 processes, really. So of course, one of them is communication. And people go, yes, communication, right. I go, well, hang on. You know that good communication is a good thing, right? But do you know how to go create it? Well, I think so. Well, let's look at the scientific research. So even a very straightforward example, because I'm always being asked about this. Give us an example of how you can communicate better. I said, well, we know that we all think in pictures, sounds, and feelings, right? Amongst other things. But we know also that people will definitely prefer one modality. So my wife is visual, for example. She likes to, if I tell her I love her, it's okay. But if I take her a bunch of flowers when I tell her, or I bring her a cup of tea in the morning, so an act of service or something, a present, something she can see, that has more impact than just telling her. Now, being auditory myself, it's nice when somebody gives me a present. I'm not particularly fussed about it. But when they tell me in a voice I really believe, and I go, oh yeah, they love me. Kinesthetics, you got to touch them meaningfully when you tell them, yeah? Right. And so people go, well, how can I figure out, I said, well, it's obvious, the predicates tell you. So people that say, I see what you mean, that looks good to me, they prefer visual. By their job, you can tell, like a TV producer will prefer visual, will prefer pictures. Radio DJ that I was, obviously audio. And so I'll use predicates like, that sounds good, that rings a bell. The kinesthetic people will say, we touched upon this. So a simple love strategy like that, understanding the modality in which someone prefers to get the message that you love them, enhances the communication.
Wow, I never thought about that. But yeah, I'm not much for presents.
but it always confuses my family because they're always bringing me these things. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, this is silly. I almost give the worst reaction because I'm just unimpressed at Christmas, and that makes them feel bad. But I guess I'm probably one of those things, and maybe I'm auditory at the end of the day.
Okay, so when you meet somebody, is it the way they look? Is it what they say and the way they say it? Or is it how you feel about them?
Gosh. Can that change over time too? Because
I don't know, but I imagine it can, yes.
I've got much more in touch with my feelings as I've gone on in life. Probably when I was younger, it was maybe visual. And then now I trust my sense more than anything. Like, does that person have good energy? And if they do, it just goes a long way.
There you go, yeah. So if that's the way you prefer, see, I'm very much about what people say and the way they say it. I mean, the other way you can, one of the other things I know is interesting, right? Visual people, they like you to look at them when they're talking. Whereas I like to look away and listen. And they go, why aren't you looking at me? You're not paying attention. And I repeat back everything they said. And so there are differences like that. I mean, the other way to do it is, if I say, think of a childhood memory, what comes to mind?
Good or bad?
Well, you went straight for visual there. Your eyes went up.
Okay.
Yeah, that's visual is up. Auditory side to side, and then kinesthetics down.
Okay.
So you went to a picture first of all there.
Okay, which means maybe I'm more visual?
Well, visuals might be your preferred, your immediate. Look, I need to ask you questions for a few minutes. And let's say, because again, you think in all three, but when you eventually get a feeling about something, it might be because you've looked at how things are. I'm going to guess it's visual myself.
Yeah.
But that's just my intuition.
I think you might be right that I'm visual, but I guess now I'm maybe trying to incorporate other things.
Your intuition?
My intuition. I'm trying to trust my intuition more where I never have most of my life.
Yeah.
Because I think I know that makes more intelligent decisions. But that doesn't mean I'm not a visual person. So.
No, but I think that's wise because a friend of mine has written a book about this, about how we've stopped trusting our intuition. Because of the way our society's developed. And it makes a lot of sense to me. And, I suppose as I get older, I trust that instinct a bit more than I used to, whereas I used to ask other people's opinions and almost make it like an equation. Go, okay, this is where, I mean, there's nothing wrong with upside downsiding. I mean, that's one of Richard Branson's things. He decides is the upside has got to be massively more than the downside before he'll go forward with a venture.
Yeah, well, we're kind of taught that the brain is everything and logic is everything, and mathematics skews that more than anything, and this is a very scientific world, whereas 300 years ago it probably wasn't. And yet, you would probably ask people, those decisions they made logically, did they regret over time? And a lot of them would say yes, even if they are business decisions. So,
well, we are a left-brain dominated, logic linear culture, and that's why artists are often seen as these, magical figures. They can just come up with stuff, whereas when we logically try and figure things out, it's not the same as when we arrive at something through the abstract or through our emotions.
Right.
And basically, if you really should be using both, right? Both sides of the brain, the left and the right. All great geniuses will be left and right brain. Leonardo would be a mathematician, a scientist, and yet a painter. And so he's ticking all the boxes.
So communication, we talked about that right away. That's one of the 7 pieces. And again, know what you are and your partner is and try to have this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of ways to communicate. For example, even the way you disagree is interesting. I mean, I used to just argue with somebody till they give up. And my wife does a great thing. She goes, let's agree to disagree. I can do that. And in conflict resolution, we find that usually the conflict comes down to somebody's needs not being met. It's unmet needs. And the way this can happen in a communication is something like this. Somebody says, one person says to the other, should we go on holiday this year? And the other person says, well, I don't want to go abroad. And they go, oh, why are you always so negative? So they jump from a request to have a vacation and straight to a personal criticism, and also the language of permanence. Why are you always so negative? Right. So the first person says, their need is a vacation. The others is, their need is not to travel too much. That could be negotiated, but as soon as you go to the level of personal criticism, bam, it's into an argument. Yeah? Right. And that is a very common phenomenon that I see, and again, comes up in the research. Yeah. Yes, I mean, John Gottman, who's done he can sit in front of a couple and within a few minutes tell them whether they're going to stay together or not. And it comes down to years of having studied the communication, not just what they're saying, but the nuances in the tone of it. And as soon as a couple's got to contempt, it's over. Finish, yeah? And so you don't want to get there, but the route to that is things like continual personal criticism, rather than actually just stating what your needs are. I mean, you could actually just say to the other person, what do you need from me, And this doesn't have to be in a romantic communication. It can be in all relationships. You know, one of the things I've noticed since I wrote this book and began using this system myself is I've had a lot of spontaneous attacks of reasonableness. You know, in the past where people say, "I do this," and I go, "Hey, we're doing it my way." I just go, "Well, let's give it a go. You know, let's see why do you think that'll work?" You know, and I've noticed that there's been a change in my communication.
And that was my next question. This doesn't only apply to romantic relationships, this book.
No, it's the idea. I mean, that's going to be the first and foremost. The people that will buy this book, the majority of them will either be single, wanting to be in a relationship, being self-saboteurs, repeating the same mistakes over and over again.
Right.
You know, and
is that most people?
That's
Paul?
a lot of people.
Okay.
Well, that comes from we seek the teeth that made the wounds. You know, when we grow up, we watch a training video of mum and dad, and we go, we learn that's how we relate, and we decide, well, I'm never going to be like those two. Or we're exactly like those two. Or we're like one of them, we go, I've had enough of dating this person, I'm going to date somebody different, and then we become the polar opposite. So this is how people end up repeating the same things over and over again, or they have inside themselves, they don't think of themselves as worthy of love, or they think they're not a great person, or their self-esteem is low, so they find people to go confirm it. They go find bad boys, or people are abusers or whatever. And so part of it is fixing you on the inside, because as we mentioned earlier, when you're happy, the world's a better place, you're more likely to find a functional relationship.
It's amazing that anyone gets together ever, or there's any positive relationships. I mean, it sounds like just a big messy sewer out there, Paul.
Well, you could look at it like that, or you could take another view, which is, because people have said, isn't this all a bit mechanical? I go, no. This is stacking the cards in your favor, right? But love is still mysterious and amazing. You can't put it under a microscope, yet we know it exists. And I'd say it's one of the most powerful forces in the universe. I worked with somebody this morning, and him and his partner clearly love each other. They argue about this and this because some certain unmet needs, which was pretty easy to spot. And so once that's cleared up, oh yeah, of course, I'm coming from a place of insecurity, so I'm being needy. And then they don't like me being needy, so then they reject me. And then this self-fulfilling prophecy comes about of, I've been rejected again, yeah? Instead of coming from a place of security, which is, by the way, it's not easy for people to go fix this themselves. And insight sometimes is enough, sometimes it isn't. That's why this book comes with a trance. It comes with audio and video. And so, as I mentioned earlier, Brian, people want me to pop out and do it to them. So with something like a self-saboteur, I do a simple parts negotiation. I say, there's a part of you that wants to be in a relationship. There's another part that is terrified that as soon as you fall for someone else, you'll lose control, you'll get hurt. And so they sabotage it to stop the pain early on. Now, both of them have got a positive intent. They're doing what they think is best for you. Get them together and get them to work for you. And when they do that, you can find, if you think, oh, this person is taking advantage of me, you can withdraw. But if not, you go with it. So you surf through life with that in mind.
And having that outside help is really important, because it's very hard to figure this stuff out between two people in a relationship, because you don't know what you're doing and you're in it, so you can't be objective about your own behavior.
That's right. When you're inside it.
And then you have a man and a woman too. A lot of times, not always, but then it's completely different.
Who think differently.
Mars and Venus as well. So it's important to have something to, like a book, a trance, something to separate you from the situation.
Well, also, you are the expert on you. So what I don't want to do is install my model of happiness in other people. I want to elicit from you what it is that you want. Because ultimately, you're going to be with somebody who you share values with. So I've heard it said that opposites attract. But that may seem like it is true on the surface. You might have a husband who's outgoing, man of the house, strong, wife who's more of an observer, quiet, but supportive. Now, even though their styles are different, at the level of values, they might have the same idea about the husband's role, the wife's role, and they might value that. So that's really, I think that's where you're going to connect with people who you've got shared values with, who you communicate with in a way that creates rapport. When you're in a good place, and you know that you're going to disagree, but if you disagree in a way that allows the integrity of the relationship to stay stable, then it's going to work, particularly if you've got a shared vision of the future, because that's very important. I used to be a relentless goal setter, and I moved over to values. So, my values being love, health, happiness, creativity. If I can tick the box every day that I'm living those values, then my life's worthwhile. But also, in a future now, I have like a direction. So I believe it's important to have a direction, because if you set off in a boat without a rudder, you could end up anywhere. And so have a direction. So if I look into my future, I see a lot of good things. Some of those are things I know are going to happen. I know I'm going to be on vacation in a few weeks. I know I'm going to be in the summertime seeing some friends. I know that Christmas I'll be with my family, et cetera, et cetera. But in the meantime, I've got loads of work events and things. But I see me in my future, and this is real important. So a lot of people look in their future and they see themselves, earning loads of money, but all they do is they see a big house, a car, and a boat, but they don't see themselves looking healthy and happy. They don't see what they could do is burn out trying to get that. So I make sure I'm in the future, in my pictures in my head, looking good, happy, smiling, enjoying life, that sort of stuff. Whereas in the past, it was very much about the status stuff. I shall have another Bentley here, that sort of thing.
Right, and you avoid that now because that didn't get you where you wanted to be.
Well, no, I wouldn't say what I would say is I don't. I don't avoid it, because I do like nice things, particularly toys. But I don't make my life about status symbols. I make it much more about the love and happiness I share with those people I like, and also I really get a thrill out of creating a positive change in the world. That's my thing, and sometimes that's with one person at a time, because I still work with people one-to-one. Sometimes it's with big groups when I do these live events. And then sometimes it's, some mass thing that I do online, or, a new book, and I can reach millions of people with that.
I had my wife come into the office a few months ago, and on a Sunday, and I pulled out a big whiteboard, and I wrote down 2020, 2030, 2040, 2050, 2060, 2070. And this was the future. And I pointed all those things. I said, 2070, I said, and we're dead. And of course she starts crying, and I was like, okay, that wasn't what I was trying to do. But we ended up talking about like what we wanted on each decade, like where the kid's gonna be, and what do we want to do with our lives, and what do we want. And it was a great point where we actually kind of got on the same page about the future. And it was a really powerful thing to do. And I think you talk about that as well, about making sure you have that vision. That's an important thing for relationships working.
Well,
right?
it is. There's a friend of mine, he's brilliant man, General Sir Graham Lamb, was the director of Special Forces. Field General's the smartest soldier in the world, right? And he said to me, Paul, there's only two big decisions in life. Who you going to partner with, and who you're going to be in a relationship, and how you're going to die. And the rest is noise. And I wait, back up, right? That's is big. And of course, who you partner with, who you marry or is your partner, it's that they're going to be 50% shareholders in the decisions and the direction of life. So, it's good that you get along and it works. So that's got to be a foundation for it. And not just they're pretty or something like it used to be for me.
Right.
And how you're going to die determines when, where, etc. So for me, it's of old age and, in a nice place, yeah?
After a career you're proud of, with
right.
people, surrounded by people you love.
There you go, yeah. Whereas before, I was thinking, yes, I will achieve, but I wasn't taking into consideration what it would take to continue to do that.
You'd be alone in a mansion in Hollywood.
There you go.
Is how you would die.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. I'd be alone in a mansion in Hollywood. Yeah, it was kind of like it's like I've seen. It was in one of it was a movie in the 70s. David Essex, and he's there in this great grand, castle. I think it is, all on his own, and sure, he has a lot of money and fame, but he's not connected with anybody. This is not him. This is the person he's playing.
Right.
And that's probably where I was headed. Yeah.
So think about how you want to die, and that will change how you live. And
when, where,
where, and all that stuff. Speaking of you and your relationships, you called yourself a commitment phobe in the past.
Yep.
And your current wife, right? You said by mental spreadsheets.
Well, I need to put this straight, because whilst there's some truth in it, what actually happened was, my friend Michael Neal, who's a brilliant life coach, he said to me, I noticed you date a lot of hot women, right? I said, yeah. He goes, but you don't like them, right? I went, what's that got to do with it? They're hot. He went, no, stupid thinking, stupid. He said,
how did he know you didn't like them? Because it was obvious. Or you were complaining about
I said
them?
I don't like them. Yeah, I was complaining, but they did, because it didn't last long, And of course, I was being a victim, not an owner. Because I would go, like if you ask me about business, I go, yeah, this happened, and some you win, some you lose. I'd be responsible. But around relationships, I go, God, I keep dating these psychopaths, and not realizing the common denominator was me, right? So what I did was, when he said, you don't like them, yeah, but that's stupid. I said, well, tell me, what advice have you got? And he said, think about who you love to be with, spend time with, and who you're attracted to. So being a hypnotist, put myself in a trance, popped the two ideas in my subconscious, and my subconscious has got a sense of humor, but the language of the subconscious is imagery and abstract and things like, but it did an Excel spreadsheet, then it do a graph, right? And the graph went, shh, and I went, Kate, went, oh, crikey. So that's awkward because we work together. And suddenly my mother had said to me a few days later, she said, oh, no, I think you and Kate should. I said, I know, Mum, but if I got that one wrong, it'd be very awkward and we get on great.
Because you know her for a long time and she was a big part of your business and she was like your assistant.
She'd been my assistant. She ended up running the companies. And
so you're thinking, if this is the wrong move, this is messy.
Bad, yeah,
right, okay.
Right. So anyway,
but you also were a little sick of your own choices. You
God, yeah.
Not yet another model in Hollywood.
Yeah.
You knew that was just getting old. Somehow.
Yeah, it just wasn't for me. I mean, I've got to say, most of the women I dated, a lot of them I'm still friendly with, and they're lovely. There was one or two bad choices, but anyway,
want to tell us more about that?
Well, bad choices in they matched a picture in my head because they looked a particular way, but I didn't go on how they behaved or how they treated me, and so because I wasn't really thinking about that being an important part of the equation. All I was thinking was instant gratification, not long-term happiness.
And the hotter they are, the more bad behavior you tolerate.
That's right.
Which makes you feel bad about yourself, drops your own self-esteem, and gets you maybe back in old weird loops.
Have you been there as well, Brian?
No, but I've heard your story so many times. No, I'm just I can't say I have. Well, now I got to think about this. So, all right. So, but this can be destructive.
Oh, no, it is.
Yeah.
It's and things I would put up with. The highs became higher, the lows become lower.
Right.
And so it's a really bad equation. And so after this revelation from my unconscious with what has now become known as the spreadsheet of destiny or something, I was sitting in my kitchen with Kate. We'd had a bottle of wine, so inhibitions lowered. And I said, tell me something about you that I don't know. And she said, I love you. I went, oh, goosebumps, wow.
Did you know that was going to happen?
No.
Were you doing some projecting NLP stuff on her? No,
I hadn't
but
done
the
anything.
Bottle of wine was there.
That helped us, yeah.
Okay.
And it was, it was quite. I mean, so after that, we then thought to ourselves.
Then you told her.
I said, well, I feel the same way.
Wow.
And one thing led to another, and then we thought we got to stop doing this. But love, being the most powerful force in the universe, overrode it all. So even though we brought our baggage, our concerns and our worries and all that stuff to it, love overcame all of that, and we then decided to get married. And I'm not just married, I'm happily married. And my point is, if I can do this, anyone can do this. So that's really what was part of the thrill for writing this book. Also, it's because when I write a book, I think, what have I got to bring the world? What's the world need and what can I bring to it? And I don't just do it by thinking what would be certainly in these days, I think what would be necessarily be a commercial success, although obviously the books have been. But I think you've got to come from a place of, do I have something to say? And I try and write the definitive book on that subject. So I set the bar high, right? So when I wrote my first major self-help book, Change Your Life in 7 Days, I thought, I'm going to write The Road Less Traveled. Now, it's nothing like The Road Less Traveled, right? But it's something as impactful as that. And so with this, I thought, I want to write the definitive book on relationships. In fairy tales, they usually end with, and they all lived happily ever after. But they don't tell you how to get there. And so this isn't just a how to get there, it's how you, I suppose, you get insights into yourself, into other people, and into the process. Because this is the other thing I've noticed about relationships. People talk about a relationship like it's a thing, like it's a destination. I want to be in a relationship and everything's going to be fine. Well, no, it's not quite like that. Relationship is not something you can put in a wheelbarrow. It's a dynamic process of relating. So every day, me and my wife are relating to each other, and some days are different to other days. And so, and life happens. So we then have to adapt to those things. And it's often in those moments that you find out who you are. And, give someone a crisis, you'll find out who you are. Give somebody, $1 million, you'll find out who they are. Give somebody, all sorts of different things around us shape us. And I like to think that in a way, it's almost like a spiritual experience being in a wonderful relationship, because you certainly get reflected too. This is funny, actually, when I first got together with Kate, Richard Bandler said to me, he goes, well, the good thing is she knows you. The bad thing is she knows you. And that proved to be so true.
Right. So on one hand, she knows who you are. On the other hand, she knows all the bad things about you.
The bad things, or certainly the things that people wouldn't necessarily want to admit to. You certainly wouldn't on a date, you know.
Right. And what did she think when you decided to write this book?
Well,
because this could get personal.
Yes, there was that. She was concerned about our relationship being put under a spotlight, or microscope even. She was concerned about, so originally I was thinking of writing how to meet the love of your life, that sort of thing. And she went, it'll jinx our marriage. And I said, well, I really want to write this book. And she actually said, look, I've got these concerns about our relationship being, because when you write a book on, say, I don't know, sleep, all I do is I sharpen, I say, look, this is what the research says, and I explain it in a user-friendly way, and that's it. This is always going to come back to, well, let's see if you're claiming this. How's it work for you then, Maisie? And so, you've got to be able to write about what you know about. I mean, I remember a few years ago listening to Howard Stern interview Barbara DeAngelis, who'd been married, I think, 3 times by then. And halfway through the interview, I was, honey, I think you need to read your own book. And she said, no, it's because I've been through the mill a few times, I can write this book, And so I suppose there is, certainly for me, there's some truth in that, because I have been where it isn't, and I'm now where it is. I've figured out the difference for me, and if I can do it, other people can do it.
And you're the first one to admit that just because you've written all these books about how you can fix yourself, that you're not the shining example of anything. You said you're still a work in progress.
I am. I'm not a guru. I have problems. That's part of the nature of evolving through life. However, do I have some solutions? Yes, and I have them in specific areas, in confidence, weight loss, in things like sleep, motivation, these sorts of things, and I make those available to people. I usually sell either 2 categories, solutions or aspiration. And this is a mix of both. This is both solution and aspiration. And also, in the same way that somebody like Malcolm Gladwell, who's a brilliant psychology sort of social science writer, his are not really focused on solutions. They're more about insights into the way that we are and society is. I'm much more pragmatic. I'm saying, look, this is how I think people operate generally. And this is, if you do this and this, you'll get this kind of result. And we know from the research, most people, most of the time, do from my books and apps.
Yeah.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website, londonreal.tv, or click the link in the description below.